Yeah, that they'd be a little scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's unquestionable that there need to be the financial resources, and we need to look at ways to get those into these organizations in a way that, allows jump rope to maintain its unique culture and benefits. And I think that one thing that, I was just thinking about that probably doesn't come up enough is there is abuse in jump rope. Um, I've heard of some situations where there's some financial abuse going on, or at worst, sexual abuse. And there's not a lot of space to talk about that yet. And my fear is that it's already tough right now
Hmm.
to have those conversations. And when money gets involved,
Right. Hmm.
and there's been very high profile situations, namely gymnastics,
You're
where
right.
there
Exactly.
has been abuse in it, and there is a lot of money involved, and that makes it challenging. So that's something
Mm.
we need to be cognizant of, and then we need to start having those courageous conversations about how, jump rope is primarily working with a very vulnerable populations, right? They're people,
Right.
they're children. It's a lot of like women and girls, and I think at some point we need to start having the conversation about what are we doing to protect these vulnerable
Hmm.
populations from
Hmm.
abuse.
Right. Yeah. It's important. It's like, yeah, actually now that you say it, that on one hand, it's a negative because we haven't had those conversations. On one hand, from my own experience, which is obviously limited, but from what I've seen, it's
Mhm.
like the culture of jump rope is so, I guess, good. I don't know if that's the right term to use. Um, that it doesn't make sense for it to fit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not that it doesn't, and I'm not saying it's not, it doesn't exist. And you're right that we do need to speak about it, but in terms of why we don't speak about it, the culture of jump rope to me seems, competitive jump rope seems far different than that of gymnastics, where, or,
Mhm.
gymnastics and cheerleading culture, there's a lot more raw competition, and there's a lot more. It's also larger. The larger it
Oh yeah.
is, the it's inevitable because of it, numbers and statistics. But you're right. Like, how do we, not inevitable in terms of the outcome, but inevitable to have somebody show up who does not have the right intentions. So
Mhm.
but you're right. And it's, now that you say it, I actually have never heard anyone, not only not, they haven't brought that up, but they also haven't um, reported any cases of that.
Right.
Not that it
I,
doesn't
I,
exist,
I
though. To your point.
exactly. I've heard rumors, but we've never had the community come together to talk about it openly. And just because, yeah, I do not believe that it's not happening. And
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
sad and think about it because it's like, damn, there's probably a lot of people who have a lot of experiences that have not really felt like they have the space to talk about that openly.
Hmm.
And that has to change if we're going to grow the sport.
Now, you might not have an answer to this question because I don't, but for the sake of going down this path, what do you think could be done?
Um,
And that is they're not
yeah,
supposed to be an answer to that one, but yeah.
I will say I'm not an expert on this, and I'm certainly not. Yeah, this is still something that is an issue I'm very new to,
Hmm.
but I think at the minimum, there needs to be people look, they're open to receiving these kinds of stories so that we can begin to formulate the
Hmm.
solutions.
Hmm.
I think right now we've kind of closed our eyes and ears to a lot of issues that have been bubbling within the universe of jump rope, at
Hmm.
least in the competitive universe,
Hmm.
right? We haven't talked about we talked about accessibility. We haven't talked about the racial aspect of that as much.
Hmm.
We talk about, it's a youth sport, but we haven't talked about the abuse that might be within the sport,
Hmm.
so there needs to be the governing bodies can look into ways to make sure they're getting that kind of information and actionalizing it by taking these stories, listening and coming up with smart solutions that are going to address them directly. And it's okay to fuck up here, right?
Right.
um,
Right.
I mean, certainly you don't want to. We're human. We're going to fuck up, and that's the important thing is that we're trying, and we're open to receiving these kinds of very serious criticisms that do exist.
Well, and I think while it is it is a relatively